friends, welcome back. Today I'm here, very exciting, with Dr. Cathleen King, more commonly known as Dr. Cat, over in St. George, Utah, here in the US. Dr. Kathleen, in addition to having her own lived journey with conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome or ME/CFS, Lyme disease, and a host of other chronic conditions that she has fully recovered from. Dr. Cat is also the founder for the Primal Trust Academy and community for chronic health issues, teaching a combination of things, including brain retraining, neuroplasticity, but plus a whole lot more than that as well. And she has also just released something that she has been working so hard on for years now, trying to put together sort of the ultimate support program for people trying to free themselves from chronic illness called Regulate, which is now available. So thank you so much, Dr. Kat, for doing this today.
It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for asking me.
I've had so many requests to have you on the channel, so today is an exciting day. Finally, I'm like, yes, here she is. So yeah, for those who aren't aware, can you tell us a bit about your own journey with chronic illness and how you recovered from that?
Sure. I had a long journey. I was one of those people who started feeling very off about 20 years ago now. And, at the time, there wasn't a lot of understanding around mold and Lyme and even like chronic fatigue. It was just like give you an anxiety pill, and, it was a really difficult journey for me. So my story started getting sick in South America. And I just was never right afterwards. And then one thing after another, doctor after doctor, within 7 years of that time, I was pretty much bedbound and spent almost a decade totally unable to work, actually over a decade totally unable to work, literally spending every cent we had going to every specialist. I mean, the drill with chronic illness, and then the diagnoses just started to add up. It was first parasites, and then it was Epstein-Barr, and then it was anxiety, and then it was Lyme and mold and thyroid issues. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, am I cursed? Like, what is happening? Like, how could this happen? Because I was, totally healthy, which I thought, 25-year-old, graduate with my doctorate degree, started to work as a physical therapist. And overnight I went down and things just were never the same. And it was such a frustrating journey to have a background in healthcare and not be able to get better. However, during that time, I learned a lot. I studied everything I could, and I utilize a lot of that knowledge now. But what I didn't do during that time was learn how to calm down and to learn how to surrender and to learn how to give my body rest when it needed it. I was obsessed with fixing myself and figuring it out. And even though I thought I was doing the strategies that would heal me, I was actually keeping my body stuck in a fight or flight activation all of those years. And I will say that I really believe my story starts honestly at birth. I was in a very traumatic situation at home for many, many years. So, I think that on a cellular level, I had this set up for chronic illness. On a cellular level, I was stuck in stress and survival my whole life. Eventually, as I learned how to put all of these things together, a good decade so later, I realized, oh, my nervous system needs some help. And that's when I shifted all of my focus off from trying to find a doctor to fix me, and rather, how can I self-regulate my nervous system? How can I get my brain function back online? How can I start to repair some of the trauma patterns in me? Because I did understand, once I realized that nervous system was a big part of my own journey, nervous system health, that I needed to help my cells to become healthy from a nervous system standpoint, not just supplements and treatments and antibiotic type stuff and detox protocols and all of those things, which, can be helpful. But at the end of the day, your cell is run by your autonomic nervous system. And when I applied a lot of my own understanding as a physical therapist, I used to work with chronic pain and fibromyalgia and things like that, but I never used those tools for me because I thought I had infection and mold, and that didn't apply to me. But when I started to realize, oh, I need to use nervous system tools and brain tools for me, that's when my turnaround happened. And that was, 5 or 6 years ago now. And it was where everything shifted, because I stopped focusing on what was wrong, all the diagnoses, all of the recommendations, and I focused on living my best life that day I reframed all of my diagnoses too. That was really helpful for me. And I really recommend that because one of the things that I think happens with chronic illness, especially when you've had it for years, is it becomes an identity. And then what happens is these doctors, they're well meaning, but they label new identities like chronic fatigue, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, et cetera, et cetera. And those are all really great for the practitioner to help guide them for your care. But what are you to do about those things? Like, what's in your control as it relates to some chronic infection in your body or mold spores filling your body? Those diagnoses and those, they became an identity that I felt powerless with. I realized that I had to take a complete 180 about my identity of what was wrong with me. And this is one of the most crucial things I teach people is that if you can recognize that at the core, on some level, your cells are in distress, and likely because your nervous system is in distress, and that core distress is running the show. And if you could relabel what's going on with you, I have distress all the way down to a cellular level. Now you can start picking something to do about that that's within your control, such as what's within my control to relieve my intracellular stress. Nervous system regulation, brain retraining, somatic tools, breathing. Those things are all within your control. So changing your diagnoses. For me, I started to say, my only infection is fear. And fear is running the show of my microbiome and causing my microbiome to go out of balance. And so I started to just change how I saw my situation. And in that change, I realized that I had so much more power than I had previously realized to change my cellular health. And granted, taking binders or supplements and things like that, they can be really helpful. I'm not a purist to say, like, don't do that. I think that those protocols work so much better when you take responsibility for your own nervous system, for what's happening as far as your chronic illness or whatever. That's what I did. That's the journey. And that's what I teach people to do now.
Wow. Everything you just said just resonates so much. And what I would have given or what I would give to be able to go back, 10, 12 years ago, however long it was that I got sick, and just to have heard that 5 minutes. Because, I read everything. I read literally hundreds of books. I saw every specialist, spent tens of thousands of dollars. Nobody was talking about this. The more people I talk to now, it's like it's smacking me in the face. When I first started doing these recovery interviews, it felt like everyone had a bit of a different story, and it was very perplexing. Like, okay, how come everyone's got this rapidly different way to get better? Like, it was a carnivore diet, it was, just all these different things. But it took a while for me to start seeing the themes, and this is just my observation. But now it's just undeniable. Like, what you're saying, what I'm hearing from you, some version of that comes at me in almost every interview that I do. So
I think it comes down to this. The core of how we heal is when we feel a sense of relief that we have a capacity to shift something. And maybe for somebody, it's a diet. And for some reason, they're like, oh, that is it. I can relax about this thing. And that relaxation in their nervous system, and them believing they have something they can do that's self-empowering to change, they'll change with a diet alone. For some people, that's not what happens. The diet isn't relieving to their nervous system, and they do need more. But the bottom line is recognizing, how am I contributing to this situation on maybe a very unconscious level? It's not like we're consciously making ourselves sick, and I'm not saying that, but what power do I have to change my cellular health? That is the question. And that's the question I immediately guide people to before I teach them any tools, because otherwise the tools are going to be another fix-it strategy. And that's what I see in these brain retraining programs. They'll go into the program, this tool will fix me. The tools are helpful. If you don't recognize the core issue is just a chronically stressed system, an autonomic nervous system that has a switch that says, I'm not okay, that is stuck on. And if you're not able to find a mindset that says, I'm going to turn off that stress switch, and maybe these tools help me, but it's that deep decision of, I'm going to come back into my own balance. Yeah, I think that this piece is crucial, and it's important for anyone in their healing journey to find that empowering approach for themselves.
I recently put out a video that was just a whole bunch of tiny clips of all the interviews I've done, just trying to take like the best points of each interview and put them all in one place for people. I had no agenda. I wasn't trying to send any kind of message. I was just trying to pull those core pieces away. And then when I got it back from my editor and I watched it all put together, I could not believe it. It was this message, like smacking you in the face over
Cool.
and over and over and over again. Slightly different words, slightly different
Yeah.
circumstances, people taking control of their diet, taking control of exercise, different things that go along with it. But this message, I think it's getting really hard to deny that this is a really important piece when it comes to these kinds of conditions.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're set up in a healthcare paradigm where we're trained to have someone tell us what they found on a blood test and what the diagnosis is and what, we need to do about it. And so this power switch, just it's part of our programming that we have to take back and find something in us. It doesn't honestly matter, I think, what it is that causes you to have that deep relief of, oh, I can do something about this. Maybe it's prayer, maybe it's planting a garden, maybe it's the diet, but it's a deep knowing and certainty that, oh, I have the capacity within me to shift my cellular health, my energy field, and more. I have the capacity to do that. That's the magic medicine. And I just teach tools to help you develop that realization, which you're more able to realize it when you're not in a state of stress. And then eventually I take people on an inner journey of reclaiming that power, because that's really what's lost. It's not even about your health. It's about your personal power.
It makes sense how we can have all these different things going on. Similar approaches can work for so many people, despite whatever those diagnoses are. And it's easy to get lost in all those diagnoses, don't you find? Or not even get lost, even embrace them. Like the more diagnoses that I got, the more validating it was, the more it explained why I felt so bad. And the more I had to tell the world that sounded real for why I wasn't working, for why I wasn't socializing or doing anything. I'm like, oh, I have chronic fatigue syndrome. I have Lyme disease. I have hormone imbalance. I have gut dysbiosis. I have, yeast overgrowth. I have, leaky gut syndrome and all those things. But then the more you take on all these diagnoses, the more you're trying to treat them all separately, the more stressed you are. Like, how are you not in a permanently overwhelmed, stressed out state when you're trying to wrap your head around these 9 diagnoses you have and how you're supposed to fix these 9 separate things?
The hardest part, though, is this. When we finally get those diagnoses of Lyme, mold, yeast, whatever, we finally have validation for why we feel sick. And we can tell our friends and family, see, they found it on a test. See, I'm asking you to let go of that and to find a diagnosis that you can do something about that's at a core level, which is nervous system health. Well, then it can be somewhat humiliating to go back to your family and say, I am chronically stressed on a cellular level, and then not have the fear that they're going to think it was all in your head or it's your fault or whatever. And that's not the case, but that's kind of the leap you're going to have to be willing to make to embrace this complete self-responsibility. Not that Lyme and mold and yeast aren't happening, but what was the setup in your system? And it's not your fault, right? It is not your fault that you became chronically stressed. It wasn't my fault. I was born into a family that I had no regulation. I was born into a society that pushed me to be an achiever and a go to, be accepted and loved. It was not my fault. It didn't start with me. It didn't even start with my parents. And it goes on and on. So there's, it's not like I caused this. And that's so important that I want you to hear that message. When I say take responsibility, I don't mean that you caused this, but you're the one being asked to awaken to this, to be the chain breaker in your family line of self-responsibility for nervous system health, to be that example for your family, for your coworkers, for others, recognizing that it is that chronic stress response that is the setup for why we can't have a balanced microbiome, why we don't detoxify. So it's both. Yes, you have these things happening, and there's some underlying factor that predisposed you to that has got to be, you have to take responsibility for it. And that leap for me was a bit of eating humble pie, to be honest, because I felt like so many people thought I was making it up for so many years. And then when I finally had to say, well, it's in my brain and nervous system, I was embarrassed a little bit, I guess, to be honest. But I also knew that this is why this all happened. I was being asked to take a radical responsibility for my life that no one in my family had ever taken. If this is you and this is like triggering you in some way, this is a beautiful responsibility I'm suggesting here.
So, what does this actually mean for people? If they get to this place where they can accept and embrace that this is what is happening, where do they start? What
Yeah.
does recovery start to look like then?
I think for me, and this is what I teach, is I always have people really understand the science regarding nervous system health and your cells. Because if you can convince your rational brain that these diagnoses you've gotten piled up have a lot to do with the state of your nervous system, you're going to be much more likely to take that responsibility. You'll be much more likely to like, okay, this is why I need to change what I'm doing. So first, this awareness of what's happening in your nervous system and all the way down to a cellular level. It's a lot of work to do nervous system retraining so that you have the motivation to do it. So, first of all, awareness, understand the science. Obviously, that's what I teach in a lot of my program. And the second thing is to start becoming the conscious observer of your life and your stress responses. Because for me, I didn't even really think I was that stressed because I had been running on adrenaline since my childhood. My body adapted. I didn't feel like a stress case, but inside I was always rushing. I was always tight. I was always clenching. So the next piece is, and this is what I teach, is to start becoming aware of what your habitual body state is. Like right now, are you clenched in any way? Like your arms or your jaw or your stomach? Is there some space that you could create right now? Because if you notice you're kind of tight, well, your nervous system is in sympathetic dominance right now, or it's in a stress state. Starting to catch the state of not only your mind, which a lot of brain retraining has you catch the state of your mind, but your body. And you start to track these things so that you can interrupt this chronic stress habit. And you'll notice how much you're rushing or how much you're triggered by people or how much you're thinking about your illness. And so this is kind of a stage where it's like, oh my gosh, you start seeing all the gunk that's been beneath the surface, and it's not fun, and it can be a little overwhelming, but it needs to be seen. So you start with awareness of the process. And then I think it's about finding certain tools that resonate to help change the way your autonomic nervous system is running, to help change the stress response in the body. And, that's another journey, is saying, I'm going to learn tools and strategies to change the way my brain and my body are responding, to the world and responding even to my own illness. And again, I could go off about this, but this is another skill that's missing in our culture. Like, we should be taught nervous system regulation as children. We should be taught how to breathe. We should be taught how to recognize our unconscious thoughts and learn how to interrupt them. We should learn how to, unwind throughout the day. You're learning the tools that should have been taught in childhood, but our culture doesn't do it yet. And then the last thing is that finding a way to go through your day in a way that looks like a wave-like pattern. And what do I mean by that? It means that we need to be living a lifestyle that is activity, relax, activity, relax, activity, relax. At the base of our being is this movement called pendulation, where we kind of expand and contract all the way down into the cellular level. We breathe and inhale when we exhale. We go and then we rest. And we need to teach our body how to come back into that natural rhythm of life. And I find that with me and with many others, especially with chronic illness, we are just either go or complete stop and crash. And there isn't this rhythm that is being taught to our nervous system of how to heal, how to go through our day, how to live this human life full of triggers and the need to rest and repair. So this last little intro piece I'll give you is, notice your day. If you've just been busy on the phone talking, sit for a few minutes and just breathe and look out the window. Then get up and go make your lunch. Go through life with a rhythm, restore your natural flow, and that's going to help your entire cellular response start to breathe, detox, and come back into a reset.
So many things that I learned during my recovery. What you just explained sounds like an instruction manual for life. I mean, yes, really vital when you're living with chronic illness. But I'm so grateful for this channel. And this wasn't my intention in starting it, but it's teaching me tools. Every time I talk to someone like yourself, it helps me function in my life better because I still need this stuff every single day. When you're talking, I'm thinking, yes, there's so many things that I need to do because if I don't, I'm going to not be in a good state. And I also think we think that when you're healthy, you shouldn't have to do any of these things. None of it matters, but you do. I, for the longest time, still do actually had, what does self-care look like for you right now on my computer? And I'd put a question mark on my hand and I would just ask myself that 100 times a day. Just like you said, catch myself in meetings, let the tension drop out of my body, turn the camera off if the people are frustrating me so I can maybe do some breathing exercises. When I do a lot of these videos now, in between them, some days like today, I have quite a few and they're high energy. So now I lay down in a dark room in between them and put on a guided meditation. I make myself get some really hardcore downtime, real rest. And I resist it because I think, no, I'm healthy. I should, but I've tried the other way, powering through on an adrenaline and in a stress state all day. And that's a recipe for disaster. So it's completely changing the way we approach our life, which I found is challenging.
Yeah, I'd say that's, my ultimate goal. It's not about helping people with chronic illness. It's restoring self-regulation in the adults so that children aren't raised in homes like I was. It's restoring how to live and teaching our children how to live so that our society starts to function better. Because we have to learn this when we have chronic illness to function, but these are the skills that we should all be doing and modeling to each other.
So obviously your Regulate program that has just launched, and you said you've been working on for 3 years, is going to be covering a lot of this. So what could people expect from a program like this?
First of all, it's quite comprehensive, meaning this isn't just a brain retraining program. It's not just a somatic program. It's a whole journey. And what I realized is that people will run from program to program, coach to coach, tool to tool, and try to find the thing that will fix them. And it's not like that. This is a process of a full nervous system and brain approach. And so my program takes you through this entire process, and it's actually a layered process. So Regulate is a level 1 program, meaning you are going to become a master of how to self-regulate your nervous system by understanding the things that I just talked about and knowing which tool to use when to use brain retraining practices, when to use somatic practices, when and how to use vagal toning. Where does trauma healing fit into all of this? How does this relate to my cellular health? So that you can become that self-responsible person I described. Regulate is meant to be, I'd say probably at least a 3-month journey. It's not quick. It's about slowly helping your nervous system learn how to go in and out of stress responses. It's about teaching your brain how to create new neural pathways. And I do things a little differently. Brain retraining for me, it's not just about visualization. There's a lot of things to it. So, if you're somebody who's done brain retraining before, this program is quite different, even though it does involve brain retraining as an aspect. Or if you've done somatic practices before, there's a lot more to this. So it's quite comprehensive because I wanted to weave together all of the tools that I used on my process in a way where people can understand, okay, we've got brain tools, body tools, vagus tools. How do we use them in a daily practice? And that's what I teach. So you'll have a full on, here's a way of living to start carving what I call pathways of primal trust. Primal trust is the frequency of the Earth's heartbeat. It's the Schumann's resonance. Primal trust is a nervous system that has the innate sense of safety, even when things don't feel good. And so in this program, you are learning how to teach your nervous system and your brain to find a way to come into relaxation and calm, even when you're having symptoms or stressed, etc. Over time, that causes your body to come into balance. To be honest, Regulate is a preparation program. It's a program that gives you the tools that you need to go on what I often is called the hero's journey or the inner work, because I find that people with chronic illness, they often have deeper layers of inner emotional conflicts that are underneath the surface that you can't always get to right away. In fact, often we need to calm our nervous system before those deeper layers of unconscious wounding will bubble up. And that's why sometimes people can start to recover only to find a lot of childhood wounding will start to surface. And then they're like dysregulated again because they don't understand the sequence of the body and the brain and how it starts to heal trauma. We calm down and then layers bubble up and we deal with those. And then we calm and accept those and new layers bubble up. sometimes our symptoms start to improve and we feel great, but then there's these emotional things that come up with relationships, etc., and we have to deal with those. So that's why regulate is, it's like a training to be able to handle life, not just your symptoms, but life, and to do what I call the inner work, which is what the level 2 primal trust mentorship is and has been, my most popular offering prior to launching Regulate. Because I saw people come out of brain retraining programs and literally they were like living in a bubble. They were doing brain retraining all day. You couldn't trigger them. They felt better and they'd say they were recovered, but as soon as they got into a new relationship or a new job, they would crash again or get symptoms, and they'd come running to me and be like, I said I was recovered and I don't want anyone to know, but what's happening to me? I'm like, well, you learned how to calm your nervous system, but you didn't deal with some of the underlying root causes in your psyche and the emotional wounding. And that's what this next journey is. And so that's the level 2 process.
I'm so grateful for, programs like yours that are out there, because so many people are struggling and suffering. And, I think a lot of them, do have paths out of this. They just need this information, this type of support. Of course, links for all of this will be in the video description for Dr. Kat's programs, for how to connect with her and how to follow her and all of that. So I definitely encourage you to expand the video description and at least give them a click and check it out. This really is in line with everything I'm hearing about healing. Well, this is really incredible. I could keep you here all day long, but people keep telling me they want shorter videos, and I hear you. I'm listening. I'm working on it. So perhaps we can have you back one day in the future. I think that would be amazing. But thank you so much for your time and for going through all of this today and for all that you do to support people.
Oh, thank you. I really hope to be able to save people the time, the money, and the years that I went through the process by, creating a full roadmap for them. We have it on top of this, I didn't mention, I have a whole community that is here to support you. Free study groups, forums, mentoring, live classes literally every single day. Like, you will get help every day. All of that is included in the way that I teach things. It's not separate courses that are high ticket. It's just a monthly membership, and we are there to support you. So it's a very different process than just a course.
Incredible. That sounds amazing. And for those of you watching, if you're not already signed up for my newsletter, I share all of this every week in case you missed the videos or you missed the details. There's a link in the video description if you want to sign up for that and get a quick recap of all of these videos that I do to make sure you're getting all the information. Thank you for watching. As always, just want to send big hugs to you, whatever you're facing. Keep at it, keep looking. Good for you for watching videos like this. I believe you will find your answers. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope to see you in the next video.